under a brooding Montana sky, where storm clouds gathered over jagged peaks. The small town of Pinterest lay nestled in a valley of weathered buildings and snow-dusted pines. At the eastern edge stood the abandoned Mitchell house, its once cheerful, yellow paint peeled to a ghostly gray, windows clouded with years of neglect. On its sagging porch, a German shepherd named Max stood motionless, his dark eyes locked on the horizon. The locals called him the ghost dog, a silent sentinel who'd appeared 4 years ago and never left. Rain or shine, blizzard or heat wave, Max held his post, his scarred face illuminated briefly by a flash of lightning on this particular evening. As thunder cracked and heavy raindrops pelted his lean frame, he remained rigid, his dignity unshaken. Only a slight twitch of his ears betrayed his awareness of headlights cutting through the darkening storm. His tail gave a single, hesitant wag, a sign that tonight something was different. Narrator. In Pinterest, Montana, a legend was born. They called him the Ghost Dog, a German shepherd who stood guard over an abandoned home, waiting for a family long gone. His story begins on a stormy night when hope flickered in his unwavering gaze. Pinterest wasn't the kind of place that graced postcards, despite the majestic mountains framing its edges. It was a town of hard winters, brief summers, and tightly guarded secrets, where folks minded their own business and expected others to do the same. The Mitchell house, a relic of happier times, stood as a somber landmark, much like Max, who'd claimed its porch. 4 years ago, he'd arrived mysteriously, his collar tag reading Max. Some whispered he belonged to the Mitchells, a Key family that had vanished amid rumors of legal troubles and disgrace. Others called him a stray, a nuisance. Yet Max patrolled the property each morning, tracing its perimeter with purpose, and each evening he resumed his vigil, head on pause, eyes never fully closing. His once muscular frame had grown thin, his black and tan coat dulled, but his bearing commanded respect even from those who wished him gone. Narrator. Pinterest was a town of silences, but Max spoke through his presence. A guardian of memory, he waited for those who might never return, his loyalty a mystery that unsettled the town. Into this quiet tableau came Abby Thompson, a 10-year-old girl with eyes that carried too much sorrow for her age. 8 months earlier, her mother's passing had shattered her world, prompting her father, Frank, to move them from Pittsburgh to Pinterest for a fresh start. Their rental home sat across from the Mitchell house, a constant reminder of absence that stirred unease in Frank and curiosity in Abby. One snowy November morning, as the first flakes dusted Pinterest like powdered sugar, Abby watched Max from her bedroom window clutching her mother's old stuffed rabbit. The German shepherd stood perfectly still on the dilapidated porch, his fur stark against the snow. Their eyes met across the distance, and something in Max's gaze, not aggression, not fear, but a quiet, dignified sorrow, held her fast. "Who are you waiting for?" she whispered to herself. Narrator. Abby, a newcomer bearing her own grief, saw in Max a kindred spirit. In a town that felt cold and unwelcoming, their connection was a spark of warmth. Nearby, Harold Baker, a 72-year-old Vietnam veteran, sat on his porch adjacent to the Mitchell property, his suspicious gaze honed by years in the jungles of Southeast Asia. He made no secret of his disdain for the damn stray, muttering about the dog's stubborn refusal to leave. Yet on scorching summer days, a water bowl appeared by his steps, a kindness he'd gruffly deny if questioned. "Been there forever," Harold growled when Abby approached, startling her. 4 years, give or take, stubborn as a mule. Abby found her voice. "What's his name?" Harold sniffed. "Max," says his tag. "Belonged to the Mitchells, I reckon. Fool dog should have moved on." Abby's eyes lingered on Max. "Why doesn't someone take him in?" Harold's laugh was dry. "Plenty tried. Animal control came 3 times, he always comes back." Narrator. Harold, hardened by war and time, saw Max as a nuisance, yet his actions betrayed a grudging respect. In Pinterest, even the gruffest hearts held secrets. That afternoon, Abby ventured closer, a piece of turkey sandwich in her gloved hand. Max watched her approach, his eyes tracking every step. At 10 feet, he stood, hackles slightly raised. "It's okay," Abby whispered. "I'm just being friendly." Max didn't growl but retreated to the porch's far corner. Abby placed the sandwich on the bottom step and backed away. "I'll come back tomorrow," she promised. And she did. Each day after school she returned, leaving food closer to where she sat cross-legged in the snow, talking to Max about her lonely days, her mother's lavender-scented scarf, her struggle to fit in. After a week, Max ate in her presence, keeping his distance. By the third week, he took food from her hand, and soon she scratched behind his ears, a privilege he'd granted no one else. "Dad says you're dangerous," Abby told him one day as he rested his head in her lap. "But you're just waiting for someone. I can feel it." Narrator. Abby's persistence cracked Max's solitary shell. In their quiet moments, a bond formed, one that would soon ripple through Pinterest, challenging its silences. As winter tightened its grip on Pinterest, the Mitchell house stood shrouded in snow, Max's silhouette a constant on its porch. Abby's daily visits had become a ritual, each encounter deepening her connection with the German Shepherd. And frosty afternoon, Mrs. Winters, the town librarian, paused her car to watch them. "First time I've seen that dog let anyone close," she remarked. Abby, protective, corrected her. "His name's Max." Mrs. Winters nodded. "Max has been waiting since the Mitchells left. Poor family. Such a shame." Curiosity flared in Abby. "What happened to them?" Mrs. Winters hesitated. "Not my story to tell, dear, but the Historical Society keeps old newspapers if you're curious." With a meaningful glance, she drove off. Narrator. In Pinterest, the past was a locked door, but Abby held the key. Max's vigil was more than loyalty. It was a clue to a hidden truth. Driven by Mrs. Winters' words, Abby visited the library's basement, where dusty newspaper archives offered scant details. A brief announcement of the Mitchells' arrival, 6 years ago, and James Mitchell's role at the regional bank. Nothing explained their abrupt departure. Meanwhile, Abby's friendship with Max spread through town, stirring unease in her father, Frank. Over dinner, he scolded her. "That animal could be sick, Abby. Harold Baker said it nearly bit him." Abby pushed peas around her plate. "Mr. Baker throws rocks at him. Max is waiting for someone, he's not an it." Frank sighed, exhaustion etching his face. "Not everything has a happy ending, Abby. Sometimes people get left behind. That's life." Her words slipped out. "Like, Mom left us." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by Frank's fork clattering. "That's not fair, Abigail," he said tightly. "Your mother didn't choose to leave." Abby whispered, "Neither did Max." Narrator. In their shared grief, Abby and Frank struggled to connect, but Max's presence was a bridge, fragile yet persistent. The town's unease about Max boiled over at a council meeting where Mayor Knowles argued for his removal. "The animal's unsightly, potentially dangerous," he declared, gesturing to Calvin Reed, a slick developer from Missoula, nodding emphatically. To Abby's surprise, voices rose in Max's defense. Mrs. Winters praised his gentleness with Abby. Old Mr. Gunderson recalled Max's frantic barking during a power outage, possibly saving elderly Miss Abernathy. Even Harold Baker stood grumbling. "That dog's got more loyalty than most. Doesn't bother nobody who doesn't bother him." The council postponed a decision, leaving Max's fate uncertain. That night, Abby and Frank argued fiercely when she vowed to keep visiting Max. "I won't lose you too," Frank shouted, his voice breaking. "A stray dog, Abby?" Her heart ached at his pain, but she couldn't explain why Max's quiet sorrow felt like her own. Narrator. Pinterest was a town divided, torn between progress and sentiment. Max, the silent sentinel, stood at its heart, forcing choices no one could ignore. The next morning, Abby's world shattered. On her doorstep lay Max's collar, cut cleanly through. Rushing to the Mitchell house, she found the porch empty for the first time in 4 years. Panic gripped her as she called his name, her voice echoing in the crisp air. Calvin Reed's smooth voice interrupted. Looking for your mutt. Animal control took him this morning. Mayor's orders. Abby clutched the collar. You can't do that. Reed shrugged. Town decisions are recommendations, kid. Nolas has authority over nuisances. He gestured to the Mitchell property. This eyesore's holding up progress. I've got plans to modernize Pinehurst. Tears stung Abby's eyes. Where's Max? Reed's false sympathy grated. County shelter in Whitefish. Aggressive strays don't last long there. As he walked away, Harold Baker appeared at his fence, scowling. They took Max, Abby cried, holding up the collar. Harold's face remained stony. Not my problem, girl. But as he turned, he muttered, County shelter opens at 10. 45-minute drive. Narrator. Abby's hope hung by a thread, but in Pinehurst even the hardest hearts could soften. Max's absence was a wound, and Abby refused to let it fester. Knowing Frank wouldn't help, Abby emptied her piggy bank, $23.42, not enough, for a taxi. As despair mounted, Harold's battered truck stopped in front of her house. You coming or not? He grunted, pushing open the door. The drive to Whitefish was silent, tension thick between them. Near the town limits, Harold spoke. Your daddy know where you are? Abby stared at her hands. I left a note. He grunted. Man's lost his wife. Shouldn't lose his daughter too. Abby's voice was fierce. I'm not losing myself, I'm saving Max. At the shelter, a tired worker confirmed Max was in holding area 3. Are you the owner? She asked. Before Abby could speak, Harold cut in. Family friends came as soon as we heard. They found Max in a cage, standing alert, eyes fixed on the door. Max, Abby called. He rushed to the bars, pressing his nose through. The worker listed fees and requirements, but without proof of ownership. Max was a stray, held for 7 days before evaluation. What if he doesn't pass? Abby asked. The woman's silence was answer enough. Narrator. In the cold confines of the shelter, Max's loyalty shone brighter than ever. Abby and Harold, unlikely allies, faced a ticking clock to save him. Back in Pinehurst, Abby and Harold returned empty-handed, Max still caged in Whitefish. The drive was quieter than before, Abby's hope dimming with each mile. Halfway home, she broke the silence. Why'd you help me, Mr. Baker? You always said Max was a nuisance. Harold's eyes stayed on the road. After a long pause, he spoke softly. Had a dog in Nam. Scout, a German shepherd like Max. Saved our lives more times than I can count. When we pulled out, they left him behind, classified as equipment. His voice roughened. Anyway, we need to find the Mitchells if we want Max out. At the Mitchell house, Harold stepped onto the porch for the first time, admitting, never been inside. Felt like trespassing. A back window was unlatched, revealing a home frozen in time. Dust-covered furniture, dishes in cupboards, family photos on walls. In a boy's bedroom, Abby found a picture of Max with a dark-haired child, laughing as he hugged the dog. Ethan Mitchell, Harold identified. He'd be 8 now. A memory book held an envelope with James Mitchell's handwriting, listing a Bozeman address. They're still in Montana, Abby breathed. Harold's expression was grim. Question is, will they want Max back? Narrator. The Mitchell house held secrets, and Abby was determined to unlock them. Max's vigil was a map to a family's lost truth. As they prepared to leave, the front door rattled. Who's in there? Frank Thompson's voice, tight with anger, called out. The door swung open, revealing Frank, Mayor Knowles, and Calvin Reed. Reed's smile was triumphant. Breaking and entering, now we can press charges. Frank's face cycled through relief, anger, and confusion. Abby, what are you doing? Before she could answer, Reed pushed past. This property's scheduled for inspection. You're trespassing on development land. Harold stepped between Reed and Abby. Last I checked, the Mitchells own this house. Taxes are paid through an estate service. Knowles flushed. How'd you know that? Harold growled. Someone had to keep an eye on things. Frank demanded answers. Will someone tell me what's going on? Abby's note said she was saving Max. Abby clutched the photo. They took Max to the shelter. They'll kill him if his owners don't claim him. Knowles stated flatly, "The dog was a nuisance. I have authority." Harold interrupted. "You ignored half the town defending him because Reed wants this property." Reed's smile tightened. "Progress requires change." Abby's voice rang out. "Max isn't a stray. He belongs to the Mitchells and they're in Montana. We found their address." Narrator. In the dusty Mitchell house, truths collided. Abby's defiance sparked a confrontation that would unravel Pinerists' secrets. Reed and Knowles exchanged a glance noticed by Harold. Frank pulled Abby close. "We're leaving. This is bigger than a dog." Reed insisted. "Nothing's happening except trespassing. Leave and I won't press charges." Harold's face hardened. "What? Are you afraid of Reed? That the Mitchells might interfere with your plans?" Knowles stepped in. "Enough. The Mitchells aren't coming back after what happened." Frank pressed. "And what happened?" Silence fell until Harold spoke. "James Mitchell was the bank manager. 4 years ago, he was accused of embezzling $500,000. Evidence seemed clear. They disappeared overnight." Abby protested. "They didn't disappear. They're in Bozeman." Reed cut in smoothly. "The property's in legal limbo. The bank's selling to recover losses I caused." Harold observed dryly. "And you're the buyer." Outside, Frank conferred with Harold privately, returning with a troubled look. Abby asked, "What did he say?" Frank sighed. "That's between us. But we're not done with Max." Narrator. The Mitchells' disgrace was a wound Pinerist had buried. Abby's discovery threatened to expose it, and Reed's plans teetered on the edge. That night, Abby overheard Frank on the phone mentioning the State Banking Commission and evidence review. Over breakfast, he brushed 3 days later. Harold appeared with a manila envelope. "Found something," he told Frank. They spread papers, bank, statements, memos, clippings across the table. Frank muttered, "The timing doesn't add up. These transactions were logged after James's credentials were deactivated." Harold nodded. Someone used his access. Who gained from framing him? Abby's eyes widened. "Mr. Reed?" Harold's face creased in a reluctant smile. "Smart kid." Reed was on the bank's board, resigned after the scandal to focus on development. Frank added, "Now he's buying the Mitchell property cheap." Abby insisted, "We need to find the Mitchells. They need the truth, and Max." Frank sighed. "It's not simple, Abby. Even if James was framed, coming back could reopen wounds." Abby's tears welled. "Max waited 4 years. He never gave up." Frank hugged her. "We'll try." Narrator. The truth was emerging, but time was running out. Abby's resolve, fueled by Max's loyalty, pushed Pinerist toward justice. 3 days after the confrontation, a blizzard swept Pinerist, burying the town in swirling snow. The Mitchells, having returned after Abby's call, stayed in their partially repaired home, aided by neighbors who fixed windows in the furnace. Max, still in the Whitefish shelter, faced a looming evaluation. At Harold's house, where the Mitchells sheltered their first night, Abby watched the storm, worry etched on her face. "Is Max okay over there?" she asked. Harold grunted. "Dog survived 4 winters on that porch. He'll be fine." But the storm's ferocity felt ominous, as if nature itself resisted Pinerist's upheaval. Across town, Calvin Reed paced his rental cabin, barking into his phone. "I don't care about the weather. The closing's tomorrow. Mitchell's. Return changes nothing." He slammed the phone down, his composure cracking. James's return threatened his empire, but Reed had other plans to ensure his development proceeded. Narrator. The blizzard was more than weather. It was a test. In Pinerist, loyalty faced its greatest challenge, and Max's fate hung in the balance. At the Mitchell house, James pored over bank documents Frank provided, detailing Reed's fraud. Sarah rediscovered their old home while Ethan bonded cautiously with Max, who never left his side. "It's all here," James said, shaking his head. "Transaction anomalies, reads emails to offshore accounts. How did I miss this?" Sarah touched his shoulder. "You trusted Reed. Everyone did." A loud crack interrupted as a pine tree crashed onto their power line, plunging the house into darkness. Without heat, the temperature plummeted. "The storm's lasting all night," Sarah said, lighting candles. "It's below zero." With limited food and a leaky house, staying was risky, but travel was impossible. Max paced anxiously, then bolted to the back door, scratching urgently. "He wants us to follow," James said. Sarah protested. "Into a blizzard?" Ethan tugged her sleeve. "Dad says Max saved me from drowning once. Maybe we should trust him." James decided, "Get your coats. If Max senses Wei Xian, I believe him." Narrator. Max's instincts were sharper than human reason. In the storm's chaos, he led his family, proving loyalty could pierce even the darkest night. Bundled against the cold, the Mitchells followed, Max into the blizzard, forming a human chain. The wind stung and snow reached their thighs, but Max forged ahead, circling back to guide them. After agonizing minutes, a glow appeared, Harold's house. Max led them to a cellar entrance, scratching until James opened it. Inside, Max squeezed through a collapsed wall into Harold's furnace room, the family following into warmth. Upstairs, Harold appeared, shotgun in hand, lowering it at the sight of the snow-covered Mitchells. "Max brought us here when our power failed," James explained. "He knew about the cellar tunnels." Harold was stunned. "Bootlegger tunnels. Forgotten. For decades." Abby's face lit up. "I knew he'd keep you safe." As they warmed, Ethan cried, "He's hurt." A deep gash on Max's flank, crusted with ice, bled from his trek. "We need a vet," Sarah urged. Frank shook his head. "Roads are impassable." Harold pulled on his coat. "I'll get Elaine Foster. She's close." James insisted. "I'm coming. Max saved us. It's our turn." Narrator. Max's sacrifice bound them together. In the storm's heart, Pinerest's unlikely heroes risked everything for their sentinel. Harold and James battled the blizzard with snowshoes, visibility near zero. Harold led by memory, counting houses through the snow. "Never thought I'd risk my neck for that dog," he shouted. "What changed?" James asked. Harold paused. "Saw myself in him. Stubborn old soldier, couldn't let go. And Abby saw something worth saving." "At Dr. Foster's," she answered, with a shotgun, lowering it for Harold. "The Mitchell dog?" she asked, grabbing her kit. The return was treacherous, Max's faint barking guiding them back. Inside, Max lay motionless by the fire, breathing shallow. Dr. Foster operated by firelight, stitching the wound on Harold's whiskey-sterilized table. "He's strong," she murmured. "Must be, to survive alone." Abby corrected. "He wasn't alone. He was waiting." The surgery stretched on, the storm raging outside. Finally, Dr. Foster straightened. "I've done what I can. The next hours will tell." They took shifts, watching Max, urging him to fight. Near dawn, Abby noticed his tail thump weakly, his eyes open, watching Ethan sleep. "He's awake," she whispered. Dr. Foster checked him, surprised. "He wants to live." Abby nodded. "He waited 4 years. He's not leaving now." Narrator. Max's will to survive mirrored Pinerest's awakening. In the storm's aftermath, a new dawn promised hope. Morning revealed a buried Pinerest, but inside Harold's home, relief reigned. Dr. Foster instructed, "Keep him quiet." Max lay still, tail twitching when Ethan or Abby neared. Flashing lights signaled Sheriff Denton's arrival with Reed, who pointed angrily at Harold's house. James donned his coat. "Time to end this." Max struggled to rise, but James gently pressed him down. "You've done your part, boy. This is my fight." Outside, Reed sneered. "Quite the reunion, Mitchell." James kept calm. "What do you want, Reed? The sale's still on?" Reed confirmed. Your return changes nothing. The settlement stands. Harold called. That a threat? Reed smiled thinly. Fact. Mitchell signed away the property. Max limped out, growling at Reed, who stepped back. Abby shouted, he protected them from the storm. Dr. Foster corroborated. He led them to safety, injured himself doing it. Sheriff Denton declared a 72-hour emergency, suspending transactions. Reed stormed off, vowing regret. Narrator. Max's courage shifted the tide. As Reed's grip weakened, Pinehurst rallied, ready to fight for its own. Spring arrived late in Pinehurst, the last snow melting to reveal green shoots by mid-April. The Mitchell house, freshly painted golden, stood vibrant, honoring Max's vigil. A new porch swing creaked as James read a letter from the state, confirming all charges against him were dismissed and Reed's guilty plea accepted. Ethan raced up, Max loping beside him, his coat lustrous despite a slight limp. Mrs. Winters says Max's story's going in the Historical Society, Ethan panted. James smiled, scratching Max's ears. Quite an honor, though Max doesn't care for fame. Sarah emerged, wiping her hands. What's this about fame? As Ethan repeated the news, James held up the letter. It's official. We're free. Sarah's eyes welled. It's really over. The month since the council meeting had been intense with Reed's crimes, fraud, coercion, exposed by Pinehurst collective testimony. The bank restored the Mitchells' home, and James worked with Martin Guthrie, Sarah taught, and Ethan thrived. Narrator. Spring brought renewal to Pinehurst, and Max's loyalty became its heartbeat, a legend of faith restored. Harold's. Truck and Frank's sedan arrived, Abby bounding out. We heard about the exhibit, she called. Harold grumbled. Town's gone dog crazy. Next, they'll want a statue. Frank laughed. Mayor's planning a Max Day. The adults settled on the porch, Ethan and Abby playing with Max in the yard. Harold nodded at the letter. Got the good news? James confirmed. Doesn't erase 4 years, but the future's clear. Talk turned to Pinehurst's revival. New. Businesses, festival plans, school improvements driven by community, not Reed schemes. Neighbors arrived with food, turning Sarah's suggested celebration into a spontaneous gathering. Max moved among guests, accepting treats with grace, then settled on his old porch spot, watching his family with contented eyes. Abby joined James, at the yard's edge. I knew Max was special, she said. Even when no one believed. James nodded. We all need someone to believe in us. Max never lost faith and you didn't either. Narrator. Pinehurst's heart beat in its people bound by Max's example. In their laughter, a community found its strength. As twilight fell, Abby shared. Dad says we're staying permanently. He got promoted. James smiled. That's wonderful, you're family now. Abby looked at Max, dozing on the porch. Do you think he knew it'd work out? James considered. Max understood loyalty isn't about reward. It's being present day after day. You understood that too. Neighbors drifted home, the Mitchells lingering on their porch, Max at their feet. Ethan, fighting sleep, leaned into James. Does Max know how long 4 years is? James gazed at Max, whose eyes held no reproach, only peace. For Max there was waiting and not waiting, apart and together. Ethan murmured, now we're together forever. James agreed, holding Sarah's hand as stars emerged. Max sighed, closing his eyes, finally at rest. Narrator. Max's vigil ended in peace, his family whole. In Pinehurst, a promise was fulfilled, sealed by a loyalty that never wavered. Max's story resonates with those who've weathered life's storms, who know devotion is measured in quiet persistence. As we age, we see what matters, not wealth, but bonds that sustain through darkness. Max mirrors the pets who stand by, us asking only to remain near. His struggle echoes our own fights for justice, patience, and vindication. When he reunited with Ethan, we felt the weight of second chances, of love restored. In a world chasing the new, Max embodies enduring faithfulness, a virtue we cherish. His vigil reminds us some things are worth waiting for, that loyalty is life's greatest gift. Narrator. Max's story is ours, a testament to commitment that transforms lives and communities. His porch vigil teaches us to hold fast, for loyalty given freely is priceless.